We are dreaming of a world without borders, of achieving the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals with a new breed of leaders who think borderless beyond the quick win now mindset. I am Lina, Executive and Leadership Coach. Together with Duncan Skelton, Catherine McGillivray-Pronto, and Tatiana Petrova, we believe that there is a way of relating that opens up understanding, belonging, transcendence, and possibility that removes unnecessary boundaries. Through monthly dialogues, we co-created the 6-part podcast series called Borderless, Discovering Borderless-Centred Leadership. These are unscripted live recordings with minimal editing centering around 4 principles: act now future-oriented, iterative and anticipatory, humanistic and interspecies, and say no to yes. Have a listen and join us in leading through a borderless lens. Today we will focus on one of the BCL principles, act now future-oriented. To me, act now future-oriented is about having long-term orientation, visioning, and a keen awareness of the way we relate to others and the world. I believe that we are only stewards of our planet Earth, and that what we do now has an impact on the future. So today we will explore how do we dynamically balance or hold both the present and the future, reactive and creative. And also, what does it mean to shift from this quick win now mindset towards a borderless-centred one?
You got all of the easy questions up nice and early.
Yeah. So Duncan, what do you think?
I think about it more as a being thing rather than a doing thing. So if you have a chronology of time, future-oriented would be about what are the future outcomes? What do we do today to get to where we want to be tomorrow? It's the doing part. The internal lens for me, I start out with the being part of it. Like, how am I being today, and how does that inform who I'm becoming, how I'm being in the future? It's that idea that how we do anything is how we do everything. I don't really like that, and it feels sort of true. In the moments where I'm cutting corners and being lazy, I find it easy to defend that and go, well, this isn't how I'm really being. This isn't me at my essence. This is me just under pressure, time constraints. If I was doing it properly, when I do it properly or professionally, then of course I do it differently and I show up differently. There's a part of me that knows deep down that if I'm predisposed to cutting corners when pressure's on, that's part of how I show up. And there's that invitation to slow down and think about, if this is an example of how I show up, then who am I being and how is this shaping my future? So one way I get into this is looking internally about the being part of it. How does how I am being now inform or shape what I'm becoming and the impact that has on the system that I'm in?
I think that's very interesting. I was also thinking about that after our first podcast, where Tatiana talked about having a heart at peace and the importance I see. One of the things that we need to act now on so that we can build a future is resolving conflict. And if we have conflict between 2 people in a family, for example, it's not just between 2 people, it's in the whole family. And then it can go beyond the family. And that can perpetuate down generations and generations. So one of the things that would be urgent from my perspective today is, how do I resolve conflict? How do I address the conflict? How do I not try to avoid it? So that there isn't this perpetuation and it doesn't become exponential. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that we can do today to act future oriented is being aware, as you say, Duncan, about the way that we act today, because that will last. It will last. the image we portray also lasts. My husband and I were talking about that this weekend. What do we want to leave? What should it say on our gravestones? Well, we weren't thinking that morbidly, but we were thinking more about, what is the impact that we actually want to have? Does it matter that we are successful in our jobs? Does it matter that we've got a house here, that we've saved money in our pension? Is that what we're going to be remembered for? No. So I think that's one of the things that we can immediately address when we're thinking about acting now, future oriented. What do you think, Tatiana?
Well, lots of things for me. First question in my mind is future. What do we mean by that? Right? And then, of course, the notion of time is evoked. And there are different times, right? So there is cyclical, seasonal time that indigenous people, for example, live on, right? How do they define future in that cycle, right? Because it's spring when you sow crops, there is summer, then autumn you yield, winter rest, then again spring. So what is future here, right? There is historical time, past, present, future. What is future there? Right? Because on that line, we are constantly departing from the past into the future, and future very quickly becomes present fast, right? So what is future on that line? Any spiritual tradition I'm aware of talks about importance of being in the present and not chase future and not being worried about the past, right? Being in the present is a gift. I like Kung Fu Panda cartoon as well, so yeah, that's why it's called present. Present is a gift. Then I'm also listening to the intent behind that future orientation. I'm hearing commitment to goodness. I'm hearing that there is aspiration to serve, an aspiration to do good, right? I work with leaders, and all of them actually, they have that aspiration for a better world, right? But oftentimes it's undefined. It's like people jumping from one cause to another. So lots of questions, right? So when I'm listening to those questions, Lina, that you've offered, there are lots of questions popping up for me. The only thing that I'm brushing up against as an answer right now, it's transcendence of ego. Because I can be future orientated, serving my needs, and in the meantime, destroying the planet, for example, right? It's not the future orientation we're talking about here. There is something else that actually packed into that wording, and that is something associated with positive intent. It's not the fact that I can plan. It's not the fact that I can delay gratification and hold off for a period of time so the future gets ripened. There is something about intentionality of goodness that is beyond my desires and wishes, that is beyond ego. That is something that is more tangible for me. So,
as you were talking about the time future, something that comes to mind, and you also talk about, Tatiana, the springtime, what do we do? What came to mind was that we continue to do, or we continue to be able to do what we are doing now, or we continue to be who we are now and what we're doing now, today, tomorrow, and into the future. So in that sense, and what you also said was like, the future is actually the present. And that reminds me so much of T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets in his opening few lines. I would just read it to you. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. So it has a And actually, it makes a lot, it really touches upon what I said earlier, that we are only stewards of our planet Earth. Not necessarily leaving it better, but not leave it worse, so that whoever comes behind us can be doing what we enjoy doing for generations. So that really is the essence of what Act Now Future Oriented. And
I hear
Go on.
I hear a theme of preservation there. Is it what you're talking towards?
It is a lot like that. I'm also exploring. So, but then it really, what it matters to me when, for this particular principle is that it is not necessarily that we are doing something better. It really is about what we have that is good. Would that be preserved in the future?
And how that relates to creation?
Creation, from my perspective, is constantly on the move. For me, when I think about Act Now Future Oriented, and okay, maybe future is not tomorrow, but even if it's setting the intention for something that I'm going to do next week, it requires the courage to take that leap. Sometimes I find that, even in my garden, if I'm planting seeds, I planted some seeds a few weeks ago, nothing came of them, but I still had the faith and the courage to invest the time and believe that my seeds are going to grow into something amazing. And they didn't. They just, probably a bird picked them up and used them for something else, maybe just nourishment. And on the other hand, we have this huge cherry tree that my husband planted over 20 years ago, which is delivering hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cherries. And he took that leap of faith to plant that tree, in the hope that one day it would amaze all the people walking by with its beautiful blossom, which it does every year. And then we distribute the cherries to everybody in the neighborhood because we don't know what to do with our cherries. And so you have to have that courage and that leap of faith, to think about the future, to think about, okay, I'm planting my tree now, or I'm planting my seed now, so that it will give something in the future, even if I might not be able to see it. It's like, I know Duncan likes to run marathons, so that image also came up for me today. Like, it's like running a marathon that doesn't have a finishing line, maybe in our lifetime, but we still have to have that vision and creativity to imagine that one day we'll reach the finishing line, even though we might not be able to see it. So that's how I'm visualizing it. Duncan, marathons?
Yeah. Well, there's more stories to share there, but on a different day, different podcast. Your metaphors are vivid. And what I found myself thinking as I was listening to you was I thought about dreaming and possibilities. Like when you're planting seeds, it's an experiment. Life can be tough. Not everything we do works. There will be successes and failures along the road, and it's all learning. We stopped trying to grow cabbages. We had a tough first year growing them here and realized our soil doesn't lend itself to the growing of cabbages in this particular location. So we grow kale, which thrives here. So we tried a thing, it failed, we learned from it, and now we're finding what works. And some of the stuff we do works, some doesn't. But it all comes from some, I guess, implicit idea of what is good, what has value, what is that positive intent that you talked about, Tatiana. So there's something for me in this around it takes action. It's not passive, it's a very active process of trying, paying attention to what we think is important, what we want, what our vision is for a future that has flowers in it or not. So something about dreaming and possibility, call it faith or hope or belief, but it's about what can I imagine to be possible. What do I want to invest in? What do I want to take a stake in? And there's something in this, like we've talked about conflict and conflict resolution tools being needed today. The second question you posed to us, Lina, what does it mean to shift from a quick win now mindset? And so there's the idea of the zero-sum game. Like if I'm looking after the people that I belong to, the people that are within my borders, in a world of scarce resource, because I don't believe in abundance, it has to be a zero sum. If you have that stuff, we won't have it, and my people suffer, so I want to have it, which means you can't have it. I hold a higher dream for leadership. Like if you're a leader, if you are in leadership, I'm interested in what is your dream of the globe, of all of us, beyond this conflict. When you have everything, what about everybody else? They still exist. They're still part of a bigger system. I dare you to dream of a dream that fits everybody in it.
So we are talking about a vision that is roomy.
Yeah.
So
what is a dream? What's the dream beyond the system that I have power over? Because there are other systems. I exist within a context, a bigger context. So for me, that, what does it take to shift from a quick win now mindset? There's something about so like the Maslow hierarchy of needs peaks at self-actualization. For me, that lends itself to this idea of scarcity, self-interest, status seeking, survival. There should be a higher level around social actualization. What does it mean when all of us become more than, when all of us come from our essence?
And what facilitates that? What makes it possible? Or what prompts it?
In as much as I can place myself in the situations that I'm thinking about, it comes back to what you've already mentioned, Tatiana, like the heart at peace, heart at war. Like conflict resolution, to stay longer in the discomfort of whatever the conflict is, means to be with that self-management piece and to get past our own like innate emotional triggering activated response to what is possible beyond this. And I'm angry at my neighbor because Catherine planted a cherry tree that works for her but is now throwing shade over my favorite seat in the garden. Like, how do I allow myself to be in that conversation in a way that is generative and expansive from a place of abundance rather than scarcity? What else is possible here? For me, that takes me back to the idea of dreaming. Like, and the more power you have, the bigger I want for you to be able to dream beyond the stuff that you have control over. If that's the limit of your ambition, then we're going to live in a divisive world with more borders.
For me, purpose is my dream, in a sense, and also last time we talked about being anchored and having this ability to be open, to be curious, to be connected to the outside world, but also being anchored in ourselves and having a strong belief, understanding what your own truth is while understanding what other people's truths are. So for me, this is also one of the keys that unlocks that door is having that strong sense of purpose, to be a steward of the world, as Lina was saying. I think for me, I'm coming up with another metaphor. Sorry about this. Obviously, I'm having a very metaphorical evening, but I'm thinking about being on a plane. You can be the passenger. You can be back at the back of the plane in row XYZ, whatever it is, or you can be the captain. You can be the pilot, and that's a bit for me. The question now is, do you want to just be the passenger who flies from one destination to the next without caring about the impact that you have on the planet, or just minding your own well-being and, oh, isn't it nice to go here, isn't it nice to go there? Or do you want to be the captain, or do you want to be the pilot? Do you want to say, hey guys, let's go this way and let's try to make a difference? And so that's where I feel that you have to have that sense of purpose. Otherwise, you cannot create a future either. I see, Tatiana, you're looking up, wondering what I'm talking about.
I'm inhabiting the metaphor of a plane. I'm imagining that plane where everybody all of a sudden wants to be a pilot and starts pointing in different directions. What that teaches me, what that shows me in terms of future orientation, conflict resolution, aligning myself to the leadership that is responsible, the leadership that is actually choiceful. Because I hear in your metaphor, it all starts with, I don't want to take a back seat in my life. And I relate to that. I don't want to take a back seat in my life. And I know that there is a lot of habitual inertia. I know it in my own experience, that there is a lot of inertia of just self-centeredness. There are physical needs to look after, there are emotional needs to look after. There are all sorts of security and safety and preservation considerations. We love our worlds. We worked hard to build them, right? So, right, back to your early example, Catherine, around what it is that we'd like to be remembered for. Is it career? Is it possessions? None of that, right? So we came naked into this world. We live the same way, right? Time is the only thing that we really truly have. And then taking backseat on my time, taking backseat on my life out of a habit of just preserving the stuff that serves me personally well. That's a sad story, so I relate to that. But I'm still not quite clear on that future orientation, right? I'm still not clear on what that is as a useful shared experience, how that can be useful shared experience. And I've been thinking about all big social changes that we regard as positive, and they are such, right? Abolition of slavery, Black rights, women rights, some legislation that prohibits child labor and child abuse, all of that, right? It started with a very small group of people just putting a stick on the ground saying, we believe in this. Yeah. And at the beginning, they've been laughed at, right? So the people who first talked about abolition of slavery within the context of their world and the economic models that was running on slavery, they were to be laughed at. And yet they held the vision powerful enough, and it was a shared vision that was contagious, that at some point there was a tipping point and governments joined in and legislation was passed, and the structure, economic structure that was fueled by slavery labor was dismantled to a large extent. I'm aware that slavery exists even nowadays, right? So not to pretend it doesn't, but we are in a different world today compared to 17th century, right? So there is power of vision. There is power of shared vision.
And I appreciate that. We need to have this dreaming and this vision. And to pick up on your backseat metaphor, sometimes we need to do that for sustainability purposes, for our own personal sustainability purposes. It doesn't mean from where I'm looking at you or hearing you that you might do that forever, right? It might just be a phase in your life that you go through in order to be sustainable for the long term. And so that's also part of visioning the future, because you want to be healthy and well and feeling good in yourself, I'm assuming. So this is also part of imagining the future, because you want to be part of that future in a healthy way. So this also is sustainability.
Yeah. It's interesting. There are a few concepts that came out. Sustainability is one, and we talk about doing something. You know, there is something we need to do, and what are we doing it for? In the sense, and also the concept, you know, of self-actualization. Ultimately, that really is about, I want to be, you know, individuals want to be able to have the autonomy that what I want to do, I can do, and have the competency to do that. But do we really need to do something? Recently, I saw this movie, Ocean, with David Attenborough, and was particularly drawn to the concept of setting up no-take zones. I heard of that. It is also something that my husband has been doing a lot. The no-take zones are marine reserves where fishing and all extractive activities extracting from the ocean are banned, to allow marine life and ecosystems to recover, to regenerate and thrive. And this is part of the rewilding of the ocean ecosystems. And they really, you know, like, don't do anything, just let that be. And there are boundaries around it. What is amazing is that it really does work. And in less than a decade, these marine lives thrive, and they actually bleed past the no-take zones, beyond the zone's borders and boundaries. In a way, doing nothing is a choice, is a leadership choice. Doing nothing in itself is actually doing something with a future in mind.
It's interesting that the theme of sustainability, preservation, restoring resources keeps coming up. And I actually like it because I have this natural suspicion of anything linear. Cool. If life was that simple, right? And when we're talking about future orientation, it's almost like there is this component that keeps coming up, and that is preservation of what is. And it almost intuitively feels more past orientated, but it keeps coming up in the context of future orientation, and it is an important component of it. Itself.
And that also comes back to what Duncan was talking about, abundance. We do have abundance. And in a way, it's like letting nature, letting our environment, our ecosystems, just let them be. So the act now itself doesn't mean that you actually have to do something. Not doing nothing is actually a choice, and it is also a doing.
And I would express that as the more active version of that. To do nothing is doing something. It's choice. It's conscious. It's a conscious decision to do the thing that is regenerative. Today, I need to regenerate. If that's the goal, and what is needed? Well, rest, walk in the sunshine, lots of water.
That is also the purposefulness that Catherine was talking about. And with that, gives us that autonomy to do what you really, it's important. You are at choice.
I yes to all of that. Yeah, and actually want to just say one more time, I love that this emerges as part of the conversation around future orientation, this whole restorative sustainability piece. And just random, Duncan, building on your neighbor metaphor, what is coming up for me with regards to this act now, future orientated, I believe the future so much that I act out of that future. We have a very difficult neighbor, They are a couple, elderly, and they are really kind of world in themselves. They do not talk to anybody on the streets. They do not socialize much. And when we've moved into this house and did our first renovation, we kind of run one house together, right? We are directly connected. And we needed to coordinate renovation schedule. We did something wrong, just not knowing the protocol. And the neighbor took offense, and kind of from there, the relationship really deteriorated, right? And at some point, I was just so puzzled because it was a small thing, easy to fix. They chose not to. We chose initially to just be astonished and then offended and then play that game. And at some point, I decided that I'm not going to buy into that. And I'm going to act as if we are the best friends. So they would walk on the street past me, ignoring me, and I would wave and say, hi, right? And I kept on doing that kind of stuff, right? So they would reject picking up our parcels when DHL doesn't find us home. I would take all of their parcels and give it back without any problems or statements, right? Why I'm saying it, because right now, like about a year now, year and a half, I'm seeing the difference, right? So now, even when I walk on the other side of the street and the neighbor sits smoking his pipe, all in solitude with his headphones on, not paying attention to anyone, he would go like, hi, right? And oftentimes he's the first one to do that. And what is coming up for me with that example is that acting now, even in a context that's very adverse to the visions that I'm holding, but out of that future, it's like, I want that future. Do I believe in that? I don't know. God knows, right? I really don't know. But I want that future. And I'm gonna act out of that future. And I'm not pretending, I'm not faking it until I'm making it. I'm actually acting out of the future. I'm bringing it in. That is the choice, right? And that informs my action. And then maybe, yes, in some years down the road, there is this neighbor who raises up his arm and says, hi, with a huge smile on his face.
That the work that I assumed you did, because you had a choice. Yeah, I could feel any manner of things in a similar situation. Could feel anger, frustration, resentment, and act out of that. And here you go, choosing something different, choosing a future that you want and acting out of that. I love that phrase, acting out of the future.
That requires actually asking ourselves what if questions. We don't know when the future is. We don't know what it will look like, but we have to ask ourselves what if questions. So what if the neighbors continue to hate us forever? Do we want to live with that? What if my kale doesn't grow because her cherry tree is keeping it in the shade? Do we want that? What if we don't protect the oceans? What if we don't show a different style of leadership that inspires us? What if we don't do these things? And then what if we do these things? And so acting out of the future requires asking these what if questions. And then we were talking earlier on about commitment or holding things loosely. And I think, you have a choice then. Do I hold it loosely and say, okay, maybe it will happen one day, I might contribute, and I will contribute in the way that works best for me? Or, yeah, I'm going full steam ahead, I'm committing, and I'm going to bring other people along with me, with my heart, leading with heart, and just, taking the whole troop with me. So we have choices, but I think we have to ask ourselves, have the courage to ask ourselves these what if questions, and not being afraid of the consequences.
It feels like it's just the easier decision for you to come from the place of who you naturally are, to come from that place of essence, rather than like being the other, which requires constant justification. I'm being this way to you that's different from how I naturally am in the world because you wronged me first. Just feels easier to choose who you naturally are, to come from essence. And it requires like letting go of ego and hurt and forgiveness and all that stuff. That's a big place to come from. And Catherine, I'd add to one of your questions. What if I win? What if I get everything that I wanted at the expense of none of you getting it? What then? Now I've got everything I wanted and you don't. What does that mean for us? Because fundamentally we are interconnected.
I just love how Duncan already said it. So my short version of what I wanted to say was that beyond what if questions is a very affirmative one. What future I want? And then I realized it's even one step further. It's who I want to be in that future. It's more about who am I there? And then from there, the choices flow. And you, Duncan, talked about that, the natural essence that calls us, and that is the most sustainable way to actually engage with whatever's present, because it costs less energy and it actually brings us to our kind of home future.
I keep coming back to your words of earlier around good intent. Because there are people who are being fully themselves. It'd be inauthentic for me to be any other way, and this is how I do business. And that for me doesn't, I don't know what you three think, for me that doesn't feel like it's a fit with Borderless-Centred leadership. There's authenticity there, perhaps. I argue there actually isn't. But that sort of rooted firm belief in self, for me, that doesn't fit because it comes from scarcity and status seeking and survival, not from a place of abundance and service. So it's like, yeah, who gets to decide what good intent is, I guess is my question. And I'm happy in the work that I do that I have a steer on that in terms of who I work with and who I can't support because we're not going to believe enough.
Diversity and inclusion topic for me has been abused in that way quite a bit, where a lot of well-started conversation on inclusion, belonging, and difference that is having place became a righteous fight for my way or highway. This is how you're supposed to treat me. And if you don't, then you're this backward, awful, ugly person who doesn't get DEI, right? And that leads to more disconnect than connect. So there is indeed something about authenticity, kind of connection with essence, and indeed celebration of diversity, but from a place that doesn't reject others' freedom and doesn't require or demand molding of others into the way that support, right? So it's a tricky topic, and I'm conscious of that. But there is something that I'm seeing in the workplace in particular, where abuse of diversity and taking it into the righteousness zone, creates more disconnection and fight than actual inclusion and belonging and finding each other.
And I see a connection there, between these two topics, the diversity and inclusion topic, and thinking about the future and the impact that we want to have in the future. It starts with understanding the now, understanding we can be interconnected, but if people don't make the effort to understand each other, then there's not a connection. There's maybe a physical interconnectedness, but there's not an emotional interconnectedness. So it starts with understanding, and I think also in order to be future oriented, in order to be inclusive, we need to be understanding now in order to make that happen. So for me, this is one of the key kind of keys as well, in addition to purpose, and being centered in yourself, in understanding yourself, also understanding others, understanding the connections between now and the future, and understanding the connections between each other as well.
What is going through my mind is that there are several themes that I've picked up from this conversation. When we are talking about acting now, future orientated, and it's the topic of preservation, restoration, sustainability. There is this creative impulse of, here is the future I choose and believe in, and I act out of the future now, right? So it's kind of the opposite, right? I'm not fine with status quo. I'm imagining another future and I'm acting out of that one now. And then there is this topic of adaptability, that there is this ability to adapt, and this ability is quite broad, and that enables balance, dynamic balancing, right? That enables that thing. And it's all kind of rooted in a positive intent. I've started with that, and we've kind of referred to it a couple of times, but that to me inherently linked to interconnectedness, the notion of connection. We are not alone. We are with other people. We are interconnected. That's the reality of it. And back to your comment, Catherine, it starts now. It starts in the present. The understanding of that interconnectedness, understanding of each other, and harvesting of that energy for whatever it is that we are aspiring for the future.
Who do you want to be in the future you are creating? And are you being that person now? Borderless leadership isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. Thanks for listening to Borderless. Next week, what it means to lead in a world that never stops changing.